I still replay that day in my head, over and over, wondering if there was anything I could have done differently. My daughter, the one I poured my entire life into, the one I sacrificed everything for, she took my pension, every single penny I had saved for my old age, and blew it all on some lavish trip with her friends. It left me with nothing, absolutely nothing. And when she finally came home, arrogant and unapologetic, she opened the fridge, looking for a snack, and let out a scream that still echoes in my memory. A scream of pure, unadulterated horror. Was I wrong for what I did? Tell me honestly, would you have done the same? Let me take you back to where it all began, to a time when my life felt simpler, if not always easy. I'm a single mother, always have been. Her father left when she was just a baby, and it was just the two of us against the world. I worked tirelessly, 2 jobs most of my life, just to keep a roof over our heads and food on the table. My daughter, Sarah, was my world. Every decision I made, every penny I saved, was for her. I wanted her to have everything I never did. I wanted her to have a better life, an easier path. She was a bright kid, always excelled in school, and I pictured her going to college, getting a good job, making something wonderful of herself. We lived modestly, always careful with money. I instilled in her the value of hard work and saving, or at least I thought I did. My pension, a small but steady fund, was my security blanket, my promise of a comfortable retirement after decades of breaking labor. It was tucked away in a separate account, untouched, growing slowly but surely. It was my future, our future. As Sarah grew older, she started to change. The sweet, studious girl I knew began to fade, replaced by someone more demanding, more entitled. She fell in with a new crowd in high school, kids from wealthier families who had everything handed to them. Suddenly, our modest home and my careful budgeting weren't good enough. She wanted designer clothes, the latest gadgets, expensive outings with her friends. I tried my best to explain that we couldn't afford those luxuries, that we had to be mindful of our finances, but it just made her resentful. She'd huff and puff, accusing me of depriving her, of not understanding her needs. I felt a knot of worry tighten in my stomach, but I dismissed it as typical teenage angst, hoping she'd grow out of it. She went off to college, and for a while, things seemed to improve. She was focused on her studies, making new friends, and even talking about her career aspirations. I was so proud, sending her care packages, calling her every week, always asking if she needed anything. I even dipped into my savings a little to help her out with textbooks and living expenses, happy to do so, because it was for her future. Then, things started to unravel again. She dropped out of college in her second year, claiming it wasn't for her, that she needed to find herself. I was heartbroken, but I tried to be supportive. She moved back home, and the house quickly became a battleground. She refused to get a job, spending her days watching TV, scrolling on her phone, and going out with friends at night, expecting me to pay for everything. My patience wore thin, but I loved her, and I kept hoping she'd mature, that she'd see the light. I pleaded with her to find work, even part-time, just to contribute something. Her response was always the same: a dismissive shrug, an eye roll, or an indignant outburst about how I was stifling her creativity. The tension in our home was palpable, a constant hum beneath the surface of our forced politeness. My friends told me I was too soft, that I needed to be firmer. But how do you get tough with the one person you've dedicated your whole existence to? One morning, about 6 months ago, I received a notice from the bank. It was a standard monthly statement, but something was off. My pension account, the one I never touched, showed a significantly lower balance than it should have. A cold dread seeped into my bones. I called the bank immediately, my voice trembling as I explained the situation. The representative on the other end was polite but firm. There had been a series of large withdrawals over the past few weeks, all authorized with my debit card and PIN. My debit card, my PIN, the only person who had access to that was Sarah. My mind reeled. It couldn't be. She wouldn't, but the evidence was staring me in the face. My heart pounded, a sickening rhythm against my ribs. I felt a wave of nausea, like the world was tilting on its axis. I tried to reason with myself, to find another explanation, any explanation, but deep down I knew. I just knew. I confronted her that evening, my voice surprisingly calm despite the hurricane raging inside me. "Sarah," I began, "we need to talk about my pension account." Her face, usually so expressive, went blank. Her eyes darted away, a telltale sign of guilt. I explained what I had found, the withdrawals, the missing money. She tried to deny it at first, feigning ignorance, but her facade quickly crumbled under my relentless questioning. Finally, she broke down, not in remorse, but in frustration at being caught. She confessed. She had taken the money. All of it, over $40,000 gone. "I needed it, Mom," she cried, her voice laced with self-pity. "My friends were all going on this amazing trip to Europe, and I couldn't be left out. You always say you want me to be happy, so why are you so mad?" Happy? My entire retirement, my security, gone for a European vacation. The anger, raw and potent, finally erupted. I screamed at her, a guttural sound I barely recognized as my own. I told her she had ruined my life, that she had stolen my future, that I had nothing left. She just stood there, defiant, accusing me of being selfish, of not understanding her need to experience life. It was like talking to a stranger, a selfish, entitled stranger who had just stripped me of everything. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Here I was, a woman in her late 50s, facing a retirement with no savings, no safety net, all because my own daughter felt entitled to my life's work. My blood ran cold when I thought about the sheer audacity, the betrayal. I looked at her, standing there with her arms crossed, completely unremorseful, and something inside me snapped. The years of sacrifice, the endless worry, the quiet desperation to give her a better life, it all turned into a bitter, burning rage. I knew I couldn't just let this go. I knew I couldn't simply move on and pretend it never happened. She needed to understand the gravity of her actions, the real, world consequences of her selfishness. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. What would you do if your own child stole your entire life savings? That night, as she packed her bags for her grand European adventure, oblivious to the storm brewing within me, I made a decision. It was a cold, calculated decision, born out of deep hurt and a desperate need for her to finally understand. I went to the grocery store, not for food, not for necessities, but for ingredients. Ingredients for a very specific, very unpleasant meal. I bought expired milk, moldy bread, rotten eggs, bruised fruit, and some questionable-looking meat. Then, with a heavy heart and a steely resolve, I went through the entire house. Every single item of food, every condiment in the pantry, every drink in the fridge, every snack in the cupboard, I gathered it all. I didn't throw it out. Oh no, that would have been too simple. Instead, I carefully, meticulously, placed all the spoiled, rotting food into every single container in our refrigerator and pantry. The milk cartons were refilled with sour, curdled milk. The bread bags held slices covered in green fuzzy mold. The jam jars contained a concoction of rotting fruit. Every single item that was once edible was replaced with its most repugnant, spoiled counterpart. I even took her favorite snacks, her sodas, and her chocolates, replacing them with items that looked normal on the outside, but were absolutely disgusting on the inside. My hands trembled as I worked, a mix of grief and grim determination fueling my actions. I labeled nothing. I left no clues. I simply rearranged everything so it looked exactly as it had before. Sarah left for her trip the next morning, a cheerful wave and a promise to send postcards, completely oblivious. For the next 2 weeks, I ate out or bought fresh, small portions of food that I kept hidden in a cooler in my bedroom. I rarely went into the kitchen, letting the concoction I had created fester and grow. The smell started subtly at first, a faint unpleasantness that I hoped would be attributed to general neglect. Then it grew stronger, a truly horrifying stench that permeated the entire house. When she finally returned, Jet, lagged but still radiating an air of smug satisfaction, she barely glanced at me. She was too busy recounting her adventures, boasting about the expensive clothes she bought and the fancy restaurants she'd visited, all with my money. My blood boiled, but I remained silent. I just watched her, waiting. Later that evening, around dinner time, I heard her stomping into the kitchen. She flung open the refrigerator door, undoubtedly looking for something to eat after her long flight. That's when it happened. A piercing, blood-curdling scream tore through the silence of the house. I rushed in, feigning concern, and found her staring into the fridge, her face pale, her eyes wide with disgust and horror. The putrid smell that emanated from the fridge was overwhelming, a foul symphony of decay. She recoiled, gagging, stumbling backward. Every shelf was filled with rotting food, oozing liquids, and unidentifiable molds. The stench was so powerful it made her eyes water. She stumbled into the pantry, hoping to find salvation there, but was met with the same horror. Moldy cereals, discolored canned goods, bags of crackers crawling with insects. Everything was ruined, absolutely everything. What is this? She shrieked, her voice choked with disgust and anger. Mom, what happened to all the food? It's all rotten. The entire kitchen smells like death. I simply looked at her, my face a blank mask. Well, Sarah, I said, my voice eerily calm, I suppose when you take all the money, there's nothing left for things like groceries, is there? You took everything I had for my future, so I had nothing left to buy. Food, this. I gestured vaguely at the horrifying scene. This is what happens when you leave someone with nothing. This is the consequence of your actions. Her mouth opened and closed, no sound coming out. The realization dawned on her, slowly, painfully. The sheer, overwhelming mess, the total lack of edible food, the horrifying stench, it was a direct result of her theft. She stood there, surrounded by the physical manifestation of her selfishness, and for the first time I saw a flicker of something in her eyes other than entitlement, fear, and maybe, just maybe, a sliver of understanding. The aftermath was difficult. She tried to deny it, to shift the blame, to scream and cry about how unfair I was being. But I held my ground. I told her that if she wanted to eat, she would have to earn the money herself. If she wanted a clean fridge, she would have to clean it herself. I told her she would have to get a job, contribute to the household, and start paying me back, slowly but surely, every single penny of my pension. It took weeks of her living off ramen noodles and takeout she paid for with whatever meager money she could scrounge up. But eventually, she got a job. Not a great one, but a start. She started to understand what it meant to work for her own money, to appreciate the value of a dollar. She started to clean the kitchen, slowly, painstakingly, removing every single putrid item I had placed there. The stench eventually faded, but the memory, I believe, will stay with her forever. We're far from reconciled, and the trust is shattered, perhaps beyond repair. But she's working, she's paying me back, little by little, and she's beginning to understand the devastating impact of her choices. So, here I am, sharing my story. It was a drastic measure, an act born of desperation and deep pain, but I truly believe she needed that shocking wake-up call. I lost my pension, yes, but I gained a chance, however slim, to teach my daughter a hard, but necessary, lesson about responsibility and consequences. Was I wrong for doing what I did? Only time will tell if it truly made a difference in her heart. Like this video, if you were on my side, if you understand why I did what I did. Subscribe for more stories like this, where real people face impossible choices and share their raw experiences. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. I'll see you all in the next story. Polish language ma convert, KRD.